Welcome to Go Vote Omaha, presented by the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. I'm Geri Simon, a League member and your host. We're going to start our primary election coverage for this season with a program on the Omaha Public Schools bond issue, which will be on the May 15th ballot. And to talk about the bond issue proposal, we have two guests. We have Mark Evans, the Superintendent of Omaha Public Schools, and we have Mark Snow, who's the President of the Board of Education for the Omaha Public Schools. Welcome to you both.
Thanks, Geri.
Okay.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. Well, let's start a little bit and talk to the Phase 2 bond proposal is on the May 15th ballot. But let's go back a little bit. There was a Phase 1 that was passed in 2014. So tell us a little bit about what did that cover, and did it raise taxes, by how much, and is it completed already? Give us the summary of that one.
I'll start at Geri and then defer to Mark on the details. But
Okay.
I guess first I want to say thank you to you and the League of Women Voters, because your efforts to encourage everyone to participate in democracy is what it's all about. So we thank you for volunteering. Next, I'd like to say we're very, very pleased. Phase 1 is about 80% done, and we're on time and on budget with all of the projects. So when you drive around town, you should see many projects that are complete. For example, 2 new schools were built with Phase 1, Bell Ryan and Western Hills. They're now complete, and the kids are in it, and the staff's in it, and so beautiful, beautiful new schools. And many of the major renovations, like at Beveridge Middle School, it's completed now. In fact, we're going to have a big ribbon cutting ceremony soon over there. So fire life safety was the primary items that the board put on that agenda. And I don't know, Mark, if you want to talk a little bit about some of those specific things.
So fire life safety, I mean, when we did a needs analysis in the district before this bond was passed, Phase 1, anyone could just go up to any elementary school and walk in. Now you have to push a button, you have to be buzzed inside the school. So fire and life safety was a big concern for many of the constituents in OPS as well as the board. We also decided to close that open classroom concept that we had at many of our schools like Lothrop and Pinewood. And it was a great idea in the 70s, but in modern day, it's really hard for the teachers and students to learn. And just with modern technology in the community and to have our classrooms prepared for our students, we had to upgrade that throughout the entire district. Also in the bond, we decided to do capacity, but we wanted to put it off for Phase 2, so we did land purchasing in the Phase 1 bond, about $35 million to $40 million worth of purchasing of land for potential new schools, which is being brought up in Phase 2.
Okay. So the board did promise that they were going to bring another bond issue for Phase 2 before the voters. That's where we're at. So tell us about what will Phase 2 do? Are we building more schools? Why is it needed, and how does it complement Phase 1?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it, because it really was a package deal. As Mark said, Phase 1 was fire life safety with all the elements he mentioned, including safe spaces for tornadoes, and some of those kind of issues too were dealt with. But the capacity issues that we had, we knew about them in 2014, but the community felt like if we split it in 2, it might be more digestible. And so after many, many discussions, we split it in 2. So it was always intended to prepare for the capacity building, to purchase the land, to be able to move to Phase 2 as soon as we were prepared. And I think we are now. I think we're in a perfect spot. I think the community's in a great spot. We're looking at 5 new schools that'll be 2 elementaries, 1 middle, and 2 high schools. To the 2 high schools, one's down south and one is out west. And if we don't build those, and I'll let Mark deal with the capacity issues, we're going to have more portables in the future, and we already have more than 200 portables in the district. So it's an issue.
I agree. One of the things with Phase 1, it eliminated 60 portables just within Phase 1. Phase 2, when you're talking about the capacity, just this year alone, earlier today, we were talking about the kindergarten class for 2017-2018 is the largest kindergarten class since 1970 in Omaha Public Schools. And we're projected through our research department studying the population growth that our school district is going to grow 3 to 5% over the next 5 years. That's very significant for an urban school district. So we have to build for the future. When you look at our K-5, it's about 2 to 5%, I think, over the last 7 years, as well as middle school, 11.6% growth. High school's around 7% growth over the last 7 years. So this is how we build for the future because we do have those capacity issues. So when you look at Castelar Elementary School, Omaha Public Schools had to purchase 2 houses to house those students because that school is over 150% capacity. And when you look at any of our high schools, our average high school, our smallest high school is at 74% capacity. I mean, so to build for the future, we still need 2 new high schools, especially in South Omaha and Northwest Omaha. And that is where the growth is in our community, and we have to meet the needs for every student that we serve, and also to keep classroom size smaller.
Okay. And the total bond that you're proposing is $409.9 million, correct? And that includes all the new schools and other upgrading, other infrastructure.
So about $141 million is deferred maintenance, fixing heaters, boilers, those concepts, and the rest is the 5 new schools in the district.
Okay. I think we have a couple slides that we want to throw up for our viewers. One shows the elementary school, the proposed spending there, and then the second one is middle and secondary schools on that. With the new schools, and you mentioned where they would be, or how did you decide, what demographics did you use, and how did you decide where those new schools would go?
Well, we knew in South Omaha, we knew that was our greatest need for population growth and continues to be for the future as well. So as the board was working on phase 1, we knew we had to find sites in South Omaha for 2 new elementaries and a high school. We already had property for the middle school, so we were fortunate in that had been taken care of in the past. And to be honest, it was a bit of a scary journey because it's hard to find land in South Omaha. It's so dense with population that it is very, very difficult. We felt really fortunate that we were able to purchase the old Ryan High site at 60th and L for a high school, because if we wouldn't have had that site opportunity, I don't know what we would have done, because it's just really difficult. And it actually ends up being exactly the right spot. It's about halfway between Bryan High and South High. So that was a stroke of good fortune. The 2 elementary sites, one's at 10th and Pine, and the other's on Fort Crook
Road.
and about 1100?
Yeah, 1100 and Fort Crook Road.
1100
That's
Fort
the
Crook
address.
Road. And then we knew we had needs out west because we don't really have a Northwest high school, but yet we have a middle school, Davis Middle School, that's in the far corner of our district, Northwest. And so we began looking for property. And again, it's hard to find property out there as well because developers are competing with you, but we felt very fortunate to get the 156th Oneida site that's going to work just perfectly to distribute the students from Burke, Northwest. It's about the midway point between Burke and Northwest too, and Burke of course is way overcrowded, and Northwest is basically at capacity now. In fact, we had to close 9th and 10th grade for enrollment, so they only have room right now in 11 and 12. But we think we were very fortunate on the land acquisition.
Okay. Talk a little bit more of the bond issue. You said is going to again address the use of portable classrooms, and I think a lot of people don't know that you'd actually had to purchase or use houses that are near the schools to have classrooms for students. So is the bond issue going to completely eliminate all the use of portables now? And if it doesn't, why not raise enough money so that you would get rid of portables?
So I'll answer the second part, and I'll have him answer the first part. The first bond got eliminated. We had over 200 plus portables in the district when we started this journey, and when we did our needs analysis, we had over $1.1 billion in deferred maintenance. Over 200 portables. The first bond eliminated 60, and this bond is going to eliminate additional. We'll still have a little bit over 100 portables left, but this is something that most urban school districts do every 4 to 5 years to work on the capacity issue, and I really do believe that we are getting closer down to that number of getting rid of more portables in our schools. We're also adding more classroom additions at Lewis and Clark, as well as Edison Elementary and Bryan, to kind of open up those capacity issues there.
Okay.
And Highland as well.
Highland as well.
So Mr. Snow's right. I mean, it's clearly we've addressed a significant chunk, but it's not 100%. But part of that is we're going to be watching trends over the next 5 years, because it'll take by the time this passes in May, and then you get all the construction project put together, you're going to be 4 to 5 years in construction. We may see some other trending patterns, and so the next bond issue may see some other needs that we don't recognize today, and maybe you end up building a school that releases some of that portable usage in a specific part of the district then. But mainly what we're doing is playing catch-up, because the truth is a decade and a half had gone by with no bond issues in this district, which is way too long, and so they end up being bigger than they should be. And so we also are pretty sensitive to that too, and trying to contain that cost. I think the board's been very sensitive to that, trying to contain the cost and not, it may not answer 100% of those portables, but that's part of it too, is we're going to be caught up after the May bond issue, and in 4 or 5 years, a much smaller one can probably meet the needs and maintain the capital needs as well as growth needs.
Now, phase 1 is projected timeline-wise to go through 2020, is that right? And this one, phase 2, would go through 5 years? Or how much, what would be the timeline on that?
I brought that timeline. I don't think your viewers would be able to see it, but it ends, the last date is, shoot, it's so small I can't even see the last date. But I believe it says 2023 for the very last project.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
2023.
Okay.
You have better eyes than I do.
I thought you were going to defer to me on this one. I could do this, yeah. 2023.
Okay, thank you.
August.
Thank you.
So, I mean,
One thing to ask you about is the inclusion of a couple things within the bond issue that I think there was a lot of discussion and maybe even some controversy or difficulty in deciding, including a pool and then the new location for the transitions program. So would you talk about why those two things were ultimately put into the bond issue, which does raise the cost, and why that was so important?
I'll start with the YMCA partnership agreement. We had a large segment of particularly our Northwest constituents that were at multiple board meetings. So you're right, I guess in that way it was controversial. And they just want more pool space. The truth is we're so short in the entire city that we can't even rent pool space for our kids' swimming programs. And we have some great swimming programs. In fact, we just recognized some students at a board meeting that had participated and won in the state swim meet. So it is a passion for many young people in Omaha, probably helped by the Olympics and having the swim trials. But anyway, so there's this big movement. But it was the challenge for the board and for the staff was we didn't want to add in the full cost of maintaining a pool year-round, and it's about a $7 million cost to build a pool. And so we started looking at different options and started investigating some ways of partnering with a separate community entity, and visited some sites in Lincoln that has some YMCA partnerships. And so we came back with that concept to the school board, is if we could get a letter of intent from the YMCA and build something similar to the partnerships they have in Lincoln as well as other places across the country. And at the end of the day, I think everyone felt like that's good. We're not going to have to maintain it. We're not going to have to pay the full cost. Plus, you're actually going to get a great community facility that's going to help, and not just for the school, but I think a lot of participants, voting participants in Northwest Omaha are going to vote because they're going to say, I get an opportunity now to have a full-fledged fitness center. But the pool was a big part of our parents in the swimming program, so I think they feel much, much better knowing that we're going to have a nice facility for their kids.
Okay. And I think then talk about the transitions program, and we have a slide to put up there for some of the costs for the alternative programs, including Blackburn and the transition program site.
So the
tell us about
transition
those.
programs, when we did our needs analysis, they were brought up initially to the board for the needs analysis. And when the district was doing their first rollout of what the potential number was, what it took was, board members as well as community stakeholders to get together and talk about, hey, let's not forget about the transition program. In the PVA area the location that they're at was too small, and it's really difficult for the teachers. And if you haven't toured it, you should get a chance to tour it and see the conditions that the students and the staff had to deal with. And we had a tremendous opportunity to kind of really do some real cost analysis through the district on getting actual costs for the bond. And it fit in perfectly to build a brand new transition program for our most vulnerable students in the district.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, transition program is for special needs students that oftentimes are transitioning at age 21. They typically stay with us till age 21 and transition to sheltered workshop and some kind of adult facilitated site. For example, Goodwill has some of them, and then there's some other programs too. But it's a special group where you're teaching not just some career skills, but life skills.
And I really, truly, I believe that when this facility is done, it will be state-of-the-art. In the phase one, we built a brand-new J.P. Lord, which, if you have never been inside of it, you should go. It is state-of-the-art, where you have a full submersion pool for the students that are in that. You have sensor lights to really work with the students as well as the staff to allow them to have the best learning environment that they could thrive and succeed in. And now doing the transition program and really working with community leaders as well as people across the country to build a state-of-the-art facility that people across the country will look at as a model for transition sites.
Okay.
That's probably our last site for an alternative program
Correct.
that was in a poor condition. Everything else we've taken care of. Parish used to be in a very poor condition
Yes,
building, and now
they
we have
a new
it.
facility.
Yep, new facility off of Cumming Street now, and J.P. Lord's, as Mark mentioned, that facility was not meant for the student needs and the great special needs that those young people have. Now they have a state-of-the-art building, and without the bond issue, and in both those cases, UNMC paid part of the cost because they wanted the property, because as you may know, they're expanding every day, and they wanted the land, and so it worked great for us. We needed to sell the facilities and needed to build something more appropriate for the kids, so we combined those partnerships with the bond issue, which was wise of the board to do as well, to save tax dollars and try to maximize what we could out of the old facilities.
Well, let's talk tax dollars. How much, this is going to raise people's taxes if the bond issue passes. How much will it raise everyone's taxes?
So for a house of about $150,000 value, it's about $105 for phase two per year.
Per year.
So that is the value. The tax increase there, when you look at phase one, I believe it's $95 or $90 per year. Combined, that's $200 or less, between $195 to $200 per year combined, phase one and phase two.
Okay.
And myself as a taxpayer and a volunteer on the school board, it's one of those things that I'm looking at my house, I'm looking at my family in the future, and it's paying it forward to make sure that the next generation of students, I mean, the facilities that we're building today are going to be lasting 50 plus years. So it's built for the students that have yet to be born to be in Omaha Public Schools and the families that will grow. So.
And so the tax increase is for the life of the bond issue, is that correct?
Correct.
Correct. So
Correct.
the phase one is going to drop off after 2020?
Let me add
Okay.
to that. That's true. It is
Okay.
that the increase is for the life of the bond, but we have other bonds that are actually going to be going off in, I think the first one is going to be in 3 to 4 years from previous bond issues. So we will
Okay.
actually see over time some decline on that, but it won't be this bond, it will be
Right.
some previous bonds that were 25,
Okay.
30-year-old bonds. So we do have some diminishing pieces that start, I believe it's
20, yeah.
3 to 5 years that we'll start to see
Correct.
some movement down on bonds that are going to be paid
And that's
off.
important for voters to know, that this is not something that is just open-ended and
No.
continues
Right,
on.
right.
Okay. So if the bond issue does pass, who does oversight over spending of the funds? How is it handled for phase one? Will it be done the same way for phase two?
Well, and I'll start out on this and let Mark finish it. I think we did something in Omaha Public Schools that all school districts should do. We have a Citizens Bond Oversight Committee that's made up of volunteer citizens that meet every month and go through every project line item with the Jacobs Construction Management Team. And they ask tough questions. I sit in on those meetings, and they want to know, why are we over budget or why are we under budget? What are we going to do with this? And I can tell you that I think by the end of this spring, we're probably going to be under budget enough that the board may be able to actually make some decisions on some of the things we weren't able to put on this phase two list. But we never want to make guarantees on
Totally.
anything till every project's been bid, because sometimes a project will come in over a little bit while others are under, but right now the total line item is under budget, so it looks pretty good. And I thank those volunteers for helping keep us on task.
Okay.
He's absolutely correct. We have the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, and that committee is kind of like that first step. They are reviewing all the documents And then you have also our operations department that works with the project manager that helps advise the board on where the projects are going. And each board meeting, if you attend our board meetings, we have full detail of every single project, every change order, I mean, as transparent as possible. And any new school or any new site that's being built or renovated, there's usually a EdSpec committee. So for all the new projects, building new schools, there's an EdSpec committee that the district keeps in contact with of community stakeholders so they can have buy-in into the new school that is being built.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's compare this bond expenditure to other districts. And I think we have a slide we want to show that's on bond issue financing, and it shows the current bond levies per $100 of valuation of homes, and how OPS compares to the other districts. What
Yeah.
would you say about that?
I think it looks great that we're clearly being frugal with tax dollars. We're one of the lowest. In fact, the only one lower is Millard, and everyone else is higher, and in some cases much higher when you look at some of the schools that are far west, Elkhorn, Gretna, and Bennington, with more than double of what we have in bond issue tax assessment. So I think it shows that our board and our school district's been very, very wise with tax dollars.
Okay. And Mark, do you want to add anything on that?
I mean, I completely agree. I believe we have a great staff at the district that work for the district, and I think they have been advising and working with the board to fully understand the tax increase, and it's our fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we spend every tax dollar wisely.
Okay. What do you say to the person who says, it's raising my taxes, I'm going to oppose it because it raises my taxes? You
Yeah.
always hear that.
Well, yeah, certainly you do, and I understand that. No one looks forward to paying taxes, especially this time of year. We're all in the middle of tax season, so no one looks forward to that. But to many of those homeowners, I would say, think about your home value. Do you want your home value to go up? Because if you have schools that have been well maintained or brand new schools, you're going to have better value in your home property. So I think you actually get a higher return on the dollars invested in bond issues in your own home value. So it's not just families with children that gain. My kids are adults now and long gone, but I think I gain as a homeowner if the schools around where I live are in great shape and people want to go there. It makes my home more valuable.
Okay. And I know the district is facing a little bit of a budget gap, about $26 million, and has to deal with that. Will the bond issue help with that at all? Or how will the district deal with that budget gap?
So those are two separate issues
Okay.
there. So this is a capacity building with our overcapacity in our schools, and that's dealing with more of a pension issue with the district. So back to his answer in your previous question, if we do not, if phase 2 does not pass, if we do not advocate and do not build new schools, the OPS, our students will still be taught, our teachers will still teach. However, that class size will go up. Our district will continue to, as I mentioned before, population will continue to grow in the district. And typically, you know, it's just like your home. You defer maintenance on your home, it becomes a lot more costlier later on down the road. And when you look at someone's tax dollars and you say, is it better now to pay the money up front, which is $105, or wait down the road and you could have $200 depending on that. The public schools isn't the districts, isn't mine, it's the taxpayers. Every taxpayer owns those buildings. And I think every taxpayer should want those buildings to be high quality and not run down because they own those facilities.
Right. So you're saying if the bond issue doesn't pass, the need is not going to go away?
No.
Right.
And the way to address it is through a bond issue. So it's just deferring that to a later time when the problems will get worse. Is what
Right.
you're saying.
Yeah. Phase 2 has $140 million in capital needs, things like roofs, HVAC systems, parking lots. Pretty significant. I mean, $140 million is quite a bit. And so not only is it space with the new schools, it's maintenance that with our budget situation, we certainly don't have $140 million to go and replace old boilers and roofs.
Okay. The bond issue will be on the ballot at the same time that the city of Omaha has one for parks and recreation, $227.5 million. So if somebody says, is the Omaha public school bond issue competing with the city's bond issue? what do you say that the city one won't raise taxes, but.
Right, the cities doesn't raise tax, and I see it as a separate issue. I don't see them as competing at all. They're meeting different needs, and fortunately, the cities doesn't raise any taxes. Unfortunately, ours raises very little, and we'll see some diminishing taxes as our old bond issues from 25 years ago begin to roll off, which is, I believe, what the city's doing. I think they've got some bonds rolling off, and so then they're adding back, but maintaining that same level.
Okay. We wanted to show our viewers what they would see on the ballot. It's quite a long paragraph. They're being asked to, so we'll put that up on the screen so you can see actually the ballot language that people will be looking at. What you're suggesting is that a yes, you vote either yes or no on this ballot proposal. And a
Right.
yes vote means that you're for passing the bond issue.
Right.
No means that you don't want to pass the bond issue.
Exactly, right. A yes vote means we're moving forward with the capital needs of the new construction.
Okay. Anything else that either one of you would like to say about the bond issue that we haven't covered?
Well, first I just want to say thanks again to the voters for 2014, the bond issue. And a lot of people said at the time, since we hadn't passed a bond in a decade and a half, or even attempted it, there was concern that we would do it the right way. I hope we've gained their trust by being on time, on budget, and if you go visit the sites, I think you'll be duly impressed. So thank you for that, and I think we can promise you that the next bond issue would be implemented just the same.
If people want to get more information about both bond issues, Phase 1 and Phase 2, where can they go to get more information?
District website.
Okay.
And
And that is, the general website is?
OPS.
You can go to ops.org,
Okay,
and
find it
there's a bond link, and you can click onto that.
Okay.
And if they have more questions, they can call our communications office. If the website doesn't give them enough, we're happy to field any questions they have.
Okay. And you have there's a particular separate section just for the bond issue on your website,
Yeah.
is that correct? So
Yes.
it's very easy to find all the information
Very easy
there.
to navigate, and it's mobile friendly.
Okay.
Yep.
If anyone, now you're going out and providing information to small groups in the community, community groups, businesses, what should someone do if they would like to have a speaker?
So if they would like to have a speaker, I mean, I would just say email me. My email is marque, marque.snow@ops.org, and I can direct them to a speaker. We have community advocates, surrogates out in the community speaking. Those are board members. Also, if our individual board members will be hosting community forums in the future, and those dates will be updated. We'll put those dates out after Easter. We wanted to wait after the holidays to let everybody know about the community forums. But we'll have about 9 community forums for the community, as well as some rally events, so people will know what's in the bond, and they're mostly information sessions, so everybody will know every intricate and detail in each project.
Okay. Well, thank you both for being here to talk about the Omaha Public Schools bond issue.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jerry.
For the League of Women Voters, I'm Geri Simon, reminding you to inform yourself about the issues, and in the May 15th primary, go vote Omaha.